So, you still think you can afford America right now? That's bold. Because most cities already priced you out. Homes didn't vanish. Affordability did. But a few places still exist where the numbers actually work. Barely. And if you pick wrong, it could cost you years. Let's start with number 10. Number 10. Edgewood, New Mexico. All right, so let's start somewhere most people completely overlook. Edgewood, New Mexico. Now, before you roll your eyes and think desert, nothing there, middle of nowhere. Hold on, because this is exactly how people miss opportunities. The data shows places like this are still holding on to something rare right now, actual affordability that hasn't been wiped out yet. Median home values here sit around $306,000, $400, which in today's market almost feels like a mistake, especially when you compare it to cities where that barely gets you a one-bedroom apartment. The population is small, just a few thousand people, which means you're not dealing with packed highways, constant noise, or fighting over space everywhere you go. You're about a short drive from Albuquerque, so you still have access to places like the University of New Mexico Hospital, ABQ Uptown Shopping, and the Sandia Mountains for hiking. But you don't have to pay Albuquerque prices to live there. That's the trade-off. You're close enough to convenience, but far enough to keep your costs under control. Now, here's the part nobody tells you. This kind of place works best if your lifestyle doesn't depend on constant city energy. Because, yeah, there's space, there's quiet, there's cleaner air. But you're not getting big nightlife or endless entertainment options. It's more about breathing room, not busy streets. Some people see that as boring. Others see it as freedom. That's the split. The interesting part is income levels here are still balanced compared to home prices, which is the exact equation most of the country has already lost. That's why areas like this keep showing up in research rankings when you filter for livability and cost together, not just one or the other. So, yeah, Edgewood isn't flashy, it's not trending, and nobody's bragging about moving there, which is exactly why it's still affordable. Number 9. Papillion, Nebraska. Now we jump to a place that feels completely different. Papillion, Nebraska. This is where things start to make more sense, and you can see how the research actually lines up with reality. When you look at rankings that combine quality of life, income levels, and cost of living together, suburbs like this consistently float to the top because they hit a balance most cities lost years ago. Median home values here sit around $311,000, which is right in that zone where it's still within reach for a lot of households, especially when you pair it with median incomes sitting above $111,000. That gap between what people earn and what homes cost, that's the key, and it's exactly what's broken in most major cities. Papillion sits just outside Omaha, which means you're not isolated out in farmland with nothing going on. You've got access to major employers, healthcare systems like CHI Health Midlands, and places like Werner Park where locals catch games and actually enjoy where they live without spending a fortune doing it. The neighborhoods are clean, schools are highly rated, and the whole area feels structured in a way that families tend to look for but struggle to find anymore. Now here's the catch, because there's always one. You're not getting the big city flash here. This isn't downtown Chicago or Los Angeles energy. It's quieter, more predictable, more stable. Some people hear that and think boring. Others hear that and think peace of mind. That's the difference. What makes Papillion interesting is that it's not trying to be trendy. And because of that, it hasn't been overrun or overpriced yet. That's usually how these places work. They stay affordable right up until the moment everyone suddenly realizes what they are. And when that happens, prices don't stay where they are for long. Number 8, Kemmerer, Wyoming. Now this next one is where things get a little extreme. Kemmerer, Wyoming. This is not one of those places trying to compete with big cities, and it's definitely not pretending to be something it's not. This is small-town America in its raw form, and the numbers reflect that in a way that's almost shocking right now. Median home values here sit around $178,900, which sounds like something from a completely different era compared to what most people are dealing with across the country. The population is under 3,000 people, so right away you already know this is not for everyone. You're not moving here for nightlife. You're not moving here for constant entertainment. And you're definitely not moving here if you need a Target 5 minutes away. What you're getting is space, quiet, and a cost of living that hasn't been crushed by demand yet. The town itself has some unique character too, like the JC, Penny Mother Store, which is literally where the first J.C. Penney opened, and that kind of old-school American history still lingers here. You're also not far from outdoor spots like Fossil Butte National Monument, where people go hiking, exploring, and doing things that don't cost $100 every time you leave the house. Now, here's the trade-off, because it's a big one. Job opportunities are limited, winters can be harsh, and you're dealing with a slower pace of life that not everyone can adjust to. Healthcare access is smaller scale too, with places like South Lincoln Medical Center handling most needs locally, which works fine for some people but not for everyone. So yeah, this is affordable, no question about it, but it comes with a lifestyle shift that you have to be ready for. That's why places like Kemmerer stay under the radar. They don't fit the mainstream idea of what people think they want. But for the right kind of person, the math here is almost unbeatable. And just when you think affordability means giving everything up, the next place proves that's not always true. Number 7, Okemos, Michigan. Now this is where things start to feel a lot more balanced. Okemos, Michigan. This isn't some tiny remote town where you're trading everything just to save money. This is the kind of place that quietly checks a lot of boxes without making a big deal about it. Median home values here sit around $359,200, which is higher than what we just saw. But here's the difference. The quality of life actually rises with it. You're just outside Lansing, which means access to steady jobs, government work, and Michigan State University right down the road, bringing in energy, culture, and a constant flow of activity. You've got places like Sparrow Hospital nearby for healthcare, and everyday spots like Meridian Mall, where life just feels normal, not stretched or chaotic. The neighborhoods are clean, schools are consistently rated at the top in the state, and safety levels are one of the reasons as families keep circling back to this area when they compare options. Now here's what makes Okemos interesting. It doesn't try to sell you anything flashy. There's no overhype, no massive tourism push, no next big thing energy. It just works. And that's rare right now. Because a lot of cities either have affordability with no opportunity or opportunity with prices that make no sense. This sits right in the middle. You've got parks like Harris Nature Center along the Red Cedar River, where people actually spend time outdoors, not just commute back and forth all day. But let's be real for a second. Winters here are no joke. Snowfall stacks up, temperatures drop, and if you're not used to that kind of climate, it can hit you hard. That's the trade-off. Still, for a lot of people, that's a small price to pay compared to what they're dealing with in overpriced metro areas. Okemos doesn't scream for attention. It just quietly delivers value. And when a place does that, it usually doesn't stay under the radar forever. Number 6, Prairieville, Louisiana. This is where affordability meets lifestyle in a way most people don't expect, because when people think Louisiana, they picture chaos, humidity, and problems. But Prairieville doesn't really play by those rules. Median home values here sit around $317,400, which lands right in that range where things are still manageable, especially when you factor in incomes that stay relatively strong for the area. You're just outside Baton Rouge, so you've got access to a real job market, healthcare systems like Our Lady of the Lake Regional Medical Center, and all the everyday conveniences without paying Baton Rouge prices to live there. That's where this place starts to stand out. It's not isolated, but it's also not overloaded. You've got space, newer neighborhoods, and a suburban feel that's been growing quietly, while other parts of the country got way too expensive way too fast. Places like Highland Road Park and the nearby Amite River give people actual outdoor options, not just concrete and traffic all day. Now, here's the part that catches people off guard: the culture. This isn't cookie-cutter suburbia. You've got food, local flavor, community events, and a pace of life that feels more human compared to high-stress cities where everything moves too fast. But let's not pretend it's perfect, because it's not. Summers get brutally hot and humid. Storms can roll through, and insurance costs in parts of Louisiana can fluctuate, which is something people have to factor in when they're looking at the bigger picture. Still, when you stack everything together, home prices, access to jobs, livability, Prairieville keeps showing up as one of those places where the math hasn't completely broken yet. It's not flashy, it's not trending on social media, but it's quietly working for a lot of people who figured it out early. And once more people start paying attention, that window doesn't stay open forever. Number 5, Madison, Alabama. Now this is where things start getting really interesting. Madison, Alabama. Because this is one of those places where the numbers don't just look good, they actually make sense together, which is rare right now. Median home values here sit around $398,800, and normally when you hear that, you'd expect incomes to struggle to keep up. But that's not what's happening here. Median household income is sitting well above $134,000, which creates that balance most cities lost a long time ago. That's the key difference. Madison sits right next to Huntsville, which has quietly become one of the strongest job markets in the country, especially in tech, aerospace, and defense. You've got Redstone Arsenal right there, NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, and a constant flow of high-paying jobs feeding into the area. That's why people who understand what's going on here are moving in before it gets out of reach. The city itself feels clean, structured, and safe, with highly rated schools that consistently pull families into the area. You've got places like Dublin Park, where people actually spend time outside, not just commute between work and home, and everyday spots like Bridge Street Town Center, just minutes away, offering shopping and restaurants without big city chaos. Now here's the thing. Madison isn't trying to impress you. It's not flashy, it's not loud, and it's not built for tourists. It's built for people who want stability, income, and a place that actually works long-term. That's why it keeps showing up in research rankings when you compare affordability and quality of life together, not separately. But let's be real, it's not going to stay like this forever. Growth is already happening, demand is increasing, and once more, people catch on to the income-to-home price ratio here. Those numbers don't stay where they are. That's how this cycle works every single time. Number 4, Carmel, Indiana. Now this is where affordability starts blending into something that feels a lot more polished. Carmel, Indiana. At first glance, you might think this place doesn't belong on a list like this, because median home values here sit around $468,800, which is definitely higher than what we've been looking at. But here's where it flips. The income side actually keeps up. Median household income here is sitting around $141,500, which changes the entire equation. This isn't cheap for the sake of being cheap. This is value that holds together. Carmel sits just north of Indianapolis, which means you've got access to a major metro job market without living in the middle of it. That balance is what makes places like this stand out. You've got healthcare systems like IU Health North Hospital nearby, strong corporate presence across the region, and a steady economy that doesn't swing wildly. The city itself feels almost engineered to be livable. Clean streets, highly ranked schools, low crime, and infrastructure that actually makes sense. Which sounds basic, but right now, that's not something you can assume everywhere. You've got places like the Monon Trail cutting through the city where people bike and walk daily, and the Carmel Arts and Design District giving it a level of culture most suburbs don't even attempt. Now, here's the twist. This place is not trying to be flashy, but it ends up feeling that way anyway because of how well everything runs. Roundabouts everywhere, organized layouts, neighborhoods that look maintained. It almost feels too put together compared to chaotic cities where things are constantly breaking down. But let's be honest, this level of quality comes at a cost. You're paying more up front, no question about it. Still, when you look at income, safety, schools, and long-term stability together, Carmel holds its ground in a way a lot of more expensive cities don't. That's why it keeps showing up in rankings when you filter for overall livability, not just price alone. And places like this, they don't stay reasonable forever once demand keeps rising, which is exactly what's happening next, because the next city on this list is growing fast. Number 3. Bentonville, Arkansas. Now this one is not under the radar anymore. Bentonville, Arkansas. This is what happens when a smaller city starts growing for all the right reasons, and people begin to notice fast. Median home values here sit around $428,500, which is definitely higher than what you might expect from Arkansas. But here's the part that changes everything: the economy behind it. Bentonville is home to Walmart's global headquarters, and that single factor alone pulls in jobs, talent, and steady income into the area at a level most small cities can't even come close to. You've got corporate offices, supply chain companies, tech roles, and a business ecosystem that keeps expanding, which means this isn't just a cheap place, it's a place with momentum. That's a completely different category. The downtown area has transformed over time into something that feels way more modern than people expect, with spots like the Walmart Museum, Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, and a growing network of trails that connect neighborhoods in a way that actually makes the city feel alive. You've got biking paths everywhere, outdoor spaces, and a lifestyle that blends work and recreation without forcing you into big city chaos. Healthcare access is strong too, with facilities like Mercy Hospital, Northwest Arkansas, serving the region, which adds another layer of stability people look for when they're comparing places. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This place used to be considered cheap, not just affordable. Cheap. But once word got out, prices started moving. That's the pattern. Still, when you look at income potential, job growth, and overall quality of life, Bentonville continues to hold its position because the fundamentals are strong. It's not hype. It's backed by real economic activity. But let's be clear, this window doesn't stay open forever. Cities like this go from great deal to how did it get so expensive faster than most people expect? Number 2, Tega Cay, South Carolina. Now this next one feels like something straight out of a brochure. Tega Cay, South Carolina. But here's the thing. It actually lives up to it. This is one of those places where people move in and then just don't leave. Median home values here sit around $529,200, which puts it on the higher side of this list. But once again, the income side keeps up. Median household income sits around $142,000, which keeps that balance intact in a way that still works for a lot of households. Tega Cay sits right along Lake Wylie, and that completely changes the lifestyle. You're not just buying a house here. You're buying access to water, views, and a slower pace that doesn't feel disconnected. At the same time, you're only a short drive from Charlotte, North Carolina, which means jobs, major employers, and healthcare systems like Atrium Health are all within reach without having to live inside a crowded city. That combination is exactly why places like this keep rising in demand. The community itself is built around outdoor living, with spots like Catawba Park, golf courses, walking trails, and neighborhoods that are designed to feel open instead of packed together. Schools are highly rated, crime stays low, and everything about the area feels structured for long-term living, not short-term hype. Now, here's the part that catches people. This isn't some hidden secret anymore. People have already started figuring it out. That's why prices here have been climbing, because when you mix location, income, safety, and lifestyle like this, demand follows every single time. Still, compared to other areas offering the same quality of life near major cities, Tega Cay holds its position because the fundamentals are still strong. It's not cheap, but it's not broken either. That's the difference. And when you find that kind of balance, it doesn't stay overlooked for long. But even with all that, there's still one place left on this list that brings everything together in a way most people don't expect. Number 1, Cary, North Carolina. All right. This is the one most people don't expect. Cary, North Carolina. Because on the surface, it doesn't scream affordable the way people imagine. But when you actually break the numbers down, this is where everything starts lining up in a way that still works. Median home values here sit around $580,200, which is definitely not cheap. But here's where it flips. Median household income sits around $134,905. And that balance is what keeps this place in the conversation. Cary sits right in the middle of the research triangle, surrounded by Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, which means you're plugged into one of the strongest job markets in the country. Tech, healthcare, education, biotech, it's all here. Major employers, steady growth, and a pipeline of high-paying jobs that continue feeding into the area. That's why this place keeps showing up in rankings when you compare income potential to cost of living instead of just looking at price alone. The town itself feels extremely well planned, almost to the point where everything just works without friction. You've got parks like Fred G. Bond Metro Park, where people spend entire weekends outside, greenways connecting neighborhoods, and a level of cleanliness and organization that stands out immediately. Healthcare access is strong too, with facilities like WakeMed Cary Hospital nearby, which adds another layer of stability that people look for when choosing where to live long term. Schools are consistently rated among the best, crime stays low, and the overall environment feels structured in a way that supports families, professionals, and pretty much anyone looking for consistency. Now, here's the part that makes Cary different. It doesn't rely on being cheap. It relies on being balanced, because a lot of places are either affordable with limited opportunity or full of opportunity but completely overpriced. Cary sits right in that middle zone where income, job growth, and quality of life all support each other. That's why demand keeps building here. People figure it out, and once they do, they don't leave. But let's be real, that demand also pushes prices up over time. That's the cycle. Still, when you compare what you're getting here to other high-growth areas across the country, Cary continues to hold its position because the fundamentals are strong and consistent. This is what a functioning housing market actually looks like when things are still somewhat aligned. And yeah, places like this don't stay under the radar forever. The last few places nobody's talking about. Now, real quick, before you go, a few places still hanging on. West Fargo, North Dakota, where homes sit around $321,900 and life feels stable. Brandon, South Dakota, around $336,600 with strong schools. Lakeview, Oregon, near $202,500 if you can handle quiet. Star City, West Virginia, sitting near $256,200. Yeah, those places still exist for now.